And at 10, Brian Wells. This is certainly an interesting case that you may not really think relates to William, but let me explain my thought process. Brian Douglas Wells was an American pizza delivery driver who was killed during a complex bank robbery plot. The plot involved a collar bomb, a scavenger hunt, the robbery itself, and a pizza delivery man. Following an attempt to rob PNC Bank, Wells was surrounded by police. That's when the bomb around his neck ended up detonating, killing him. And while his family denies that he was a part of it, investigators and a federal prosecutor concluded that Wells was a knowing participant in the bank robbery. However, he was told that the bomb was fake, and he did not know that his co-conspirators intended for him to die. Now, I think that it was probably detonated because he got caught and they didn't want him to rat on them, and that is the prevailing theory amongst these people as well, amongst the prosecutor and whatnot. But aside from being a pizza delivery man for Mamma Mia's Pizzeria, what possible connection could he have to Afton? Well, being killed by a device that was supposed to be safe, for one, the spring locking and the collar, being betrayed by your peers, in William's case most likely Henry, and the affinity for complex plans. I feel like this may have been at least a slight source of inspiration, especially since this came up when I searched for pizza place serial killers, because I was hoping that there would be one. That's weird to say. Let's just move on. And at 9, Andrew Cunanan. Andrew Cunanan was born in San Diego, California, and eventually settled in San Francisco's Castro district and socialized with older, wealthy gay men while indulging heavily in illicit substances. It's unclear what set him off, but he began a cross-country killing spree of 5 unknown victims, the last of which was actually fashion designer Gianni Versace. Cunanan killed himself on a Miami boathouse in 1997, and if that didn't set off an alarm, congratulations, you have not been ruined by FNAF yet. However, William Afton also had 5 victims at least, but definitely only had 5 when FNAF 1 and even around FNAF 2 was released. And while FNAF 1 does take place in 1993, many have theorized it to instead take place in 1997, which is unlikely given the minimum wage of the times and the connection to another real person, but nonetheless, it's certainly an interesting case of more possible dates lining up and the same number of victims. You know, a lot of people on this list are actually going to have 5 victims, and it's extremely creepy. And at 8, Nathan Dunlap. In December of 1993, after Chuck E. Cheese had closed in Aurora, Colorado, Margaret Kohlberg, who was the manager of this Chuck E. Cheese, was tallying receipts in the back room. While she was doing that, Bobby Stevens was scrubbing down the kitchen, and Ben Grant, Colleen O'Connor, and Sylvia Crawwell were all working in the main party area. However, there was someone hiding in the bathroom, 19-year-old Nathan Dunlap, who earlier that year had begun working as a cook, but was fired after an argument over his hours. But this time he was looking for revenge. He exited the bathroom and began firing, killing everyone in the building. First Sylvia, then Ben, then Colleen, then he went into the kitchen where he shot Bobby, although Bobby ended up surviving and was actually a key witness in his case. Then Nathan went to the back room, where Margaret opened the safe before being shot twice. Nathan filled her bag with $1,500 cash, arcade tokens, and keychains, but thanks to the security cameras he was promptly arrested and sentenced to death. Thanks to MatPat and his first game theory on FNAF, this one is fairly well known, hence why it's closer to the top, but if I didn't include it, I feel like everyone in the comments would have asked me why, so there you go. And at 7, Burke and Hare. The Burke and Hare murders were 16 serial killings committed over a period of about 10 months in 1828 in Edinburgh, Scotland. The 2 men who committed these killings, last names Burke and Hare, were doing it because they also sold the corpses to Robert Knox for dissection at his anatomy lectures. There's actually a shortage of corpses in Edinburgh, and thus people actually started grave robbing and selling the corpses rather than selling the possessions, since a loophole in the system only considered it a theft if the body was taken with its clothes. Naked corpses were fine to take though, apparently. They didn't really think that one through. These 2 were killing in the name of science, something that we suspect William was doing as well. However, they actually were, in a messed up way, contributing to the furthering of science, whereas William is only doing it for his own selfish reasons and to become immortal. After Hare was given immunity to confess to the murders so that they could convict Burke, Burke was sentenced to death. Shortly afterwards, his corpse was dissected and his skeleton was displayed at the Anatomical Museum of Edinburgh Medical School, where, as of 2021, it actually still remains. Oh, and by the way, the reason they're known as Burke and Hare was because both of their first names are William. Yeah. So maybe Afton's wife is named something similar. And at 10, Donald Harvey. Harvey belonged to a group of psychos known as the Angels of Mercy, who claimed to kill for the benefit of their victim. Harvey was convicted of 37 of his more than 57 suspected murders, and he had also confessed to as many as 87. When Harvey was hired at Cincinnati VA Medical Hospital, he managed to collect over 30 pounds of cyanide, which he kept in his home. He also kept diaries and detailed notes on each of his victims, including how he killed them. This gives me intense William Afton vibes, okay? Not for some certain reasons, but for the delusion of him thinking that he was doing it for the victim's benefit, but still doing it in horrifying ways. It's the exact same kind of delusion that I could see William having, and a similar delusion to what he seems to have in the games. In the books, I don't think he's like this exactly, but his game version certainly seems the type, especially given his appearance in the Foxy Go 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 minigame where he's smiling. And at 9, Raincoat Killer. Hailing from the Deadly Premonition universe, this video game villain is the launching point for the game's story. The murder of Anna Graham sparked renewed interest in the legend of the Raincoat Killer. After the arrival of FBI agent Francis York Morgan, Harry began to keep a close eye on the case, intervening at seemingly random moments. He uses his aide, Michael Tolleson, to convey messages to York, telling him to take it slow and to keep his mind open to all possibilities. As York tried to solve the case, the new killer showed up many times. As more evidence surfaced, it became clear that George Woodman was the new Raincoat Killer. He had sacrificed the woman of Greenvale in order to become immortal. Unfortunately for him, York was able to defeat him, ending the terror of the Raincoat Killer. Much like how, in the novels at least, William is searching for immortality thanks to the discovery of Remnant, and then is defeated by the Springtrap suit and Henry's multiple fires. Okay, well, he would have been defeated if he wasn't possessed by his son, but I mean, like, there's still a parallel there, right? And at 8, The Ice Cream Man. Suggested to me by Amanda, the Ice Cream Man comic series is a horror anthology of loosely connected stories that all share the common link of a mysterious ice cream man named Rick, who's also revealed to be Ricardus, who, while a seemingly ordinary ice cream man, possesses inexplicable powers which he uses upon unsuspecting people. Rick's nemesis Caleb, a man dressed in an all-black cowboy outfit, will sporadically appear in the series trying to thwart Rick's plans, sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully. Honestly, this kind of story is very reminiscent of William Afton and Henry's story, Afton being the ice cream man, which is ironic given what happened to Elizabeth, and Henry is Caleb trying to thwart William's plans, sometimes successful and sometimes not. But no matter what, William always comes back, just like the Ice Cream Man. And Ice Cream Man is very close to how I feel William acts with his victims. Like, he's all like warm and fuzzy, and then he just shoves you in the back of his freezing cold van and drives off. And at 7, Norman Osborn. Another suggestion from Amanda that I'm surprised I didn't think of first. Norman Osborn being the Green Goblin, but also the CEO of a very successful company, it seems like these two share a lot of the same ideas, or I guess rather the same concepts. Business owner who by night is evil and wreaks havoc without anyone really knowing it. But despite their secrecy, eventually people catch on and find out their secrets. Superpowers in the form of a goblin serum or being possessed by your dead son, so the two characters at the fundamental level are actually very much alike. The specifics aren't, which is really what threw me off, but it's a part of why we wanted Willem Dafoe to play Afton in the FNAF movie, right? Because he played this kind of character before with Norman. Plus, Norman and Afton kind of sound the same, just a little bit though. Osborn and William don't. But William and Willem do, so who knows at this point. And at 6, Thomas Lee Dillon. Thomas Lee Dillon was a serial sniper found guilty of killing 5 people. Directed by the voices in his head, Dillon killed people randomly. According to attending psychiatrists, Dillon's delusions of grandeur spilled over into the reality of his life and the lives of his victims. His victims were killed by a high-powered rifle while they participated in outdoor activities, sometimes hundreds of miles from Dillon's home. Authorities did not link them to Dillon until he had sent a letter to the local paper. After the FBI put together a criminal profile of the killer, a friend of Dillon's brought him to the attention of the authorities, which in my mind at least is nearly identical to the story of William Afton. The amount of the first victims, the authorities only investigating the murders after they got tipped off by a friend of the killer, in Afton's case that being Henry, and eventually you'll see that there are quite a few similarities to multiple real people, and it's scary. At least when people compare me to Afton, it's because I wear purple. Halfway through into number 5, Elliot Ludwig. Elliot Ludwig is a recurring character in Poppy Playtime. He is most known for his position as both the founder and overseer of Playtime Co. Elliot Ludwig is an old man with light skin, blackish hair, and an unknown eye color, probably brown, given that I think it's the most common eye color. He is seen wearing a suit during the first VHS tape in the beginning of Chapter 1, A Tight Squeeze, which seems to be an old Playtime Co commercial for Poppy herself and for the factory tours that were once held there, where in this video he is engulfed in purple light, which is certainly an interesting moment, one that I even pointed out in our Poppy Playtime playthrough video. Not to mention the whole he puts people in toys thing, like how William put people in animatronics, plus Elliot probably put his daughter into Poppy, much like how Afton's daughter Elizabeth ended up becoming Circus Baby, and then Elliot sealed his daughter away, and Afton put Baby in Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, which we visit in sister locations, so yeah, like this. And at 4, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was an American serial killer who killed at least 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospital and charitable events as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown, personas that he had devised. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public service as a clown prior to the discovery of his crimes. Gacy committed all of his murders inside of his ranch house. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and then dupe them into donning handcuffs with the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. And while this is absolutely disgusting and makes me sick to my stomach, there are still a few similarities to Afton. Killing in a place that's related to you, for instance, Gacy, it was his home, and for Afton it's his business. The target demographic was also the same with young people, although Afton is a bit more diverse and killed girls as well. And while you may think that this is a stretch, even FNAF made the connection with FNAF AR through the Clown Springtrap skin. I mean, come on, dude, if that's not a giveaway, I don't know what is. And at 6, Ted Bundy. During an interview with Daco, PJ Haywood, the voice actor for William Afton in sister location FNAF AR and Ultimate Custom Night, said that Scott Cawthon described William as being a charismatic, smooth-talking snake oil salesman, which coincides with Book William being able to convince anyone of anything. This is actually very similar to how Ted Bundy had been described. Bundy was regarded as charismatic and handsome, traits that he exploited to win the trust of both his victims and society as a whole. He would typically approach his victims in public places, either feigning a physical impairment such as an injury or impersonating an authority figure, before bludgeoning them until they were unconscious. While he did operate nearly a decade before Afton started his spree, those are merely just like year numbers. But one of the most interesting facts, however, is that in 1975, Bundy was arrested and jailed in Utah for aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault. In Utah, where the games and the crimes of Afton take place. Halfway through into number 5, Arthur Gary Bishop. Arthur Gary Bishop was an American serial killer in 1983, and as a result of a routine police investigation, he confessed to the murders of 5 young boys between 1979 and 1983. Bishop was born in Hinckley, Utah, and was the eldest of 6 brothers. Bishop was raised as a devout Latter-day Saint, Mormon, and was an Eagle Scout and an honor student, which is already suspicious in comparison to Afton, given that Afton was also regarded as intelligent given his talent for animatronics, especially in the 80s, and his passion for business. But not only that, Bishop also operated under an alias. Bishop was arrested for embezzlement in February of 1978 and given a 5-year suspended sentence, but he skipped his parole and fled to Salt Lake City, living under the alias of Roger Downs. Under this alias, Bishop would then kill 5 boys between 1979 and 1983. It's also interesting that multiple key dates in Bishop's life line up closely to releases of FNAF games. On July 14th, 1993, he was arrested, and FNAF 4 came out on July 23rd, 9 days after that. Well, not in the same year, but you know what I mean. Bishop's first kill was on October 14th, 1979, and Sister Location was released on October 7th. I mean, it's not concrete, but it's certainly interesting. Plus, also he was caught in 1983, the same year that Crying Child was bit. In at 4, Donald Harvey. Harvey belonged to a group of psychos known as the Angels of Mercy who claimed to kill for the benefit of the victim. Harvey was convicted of 37 of his more than 57 suspected murders, and he confessed to as many as 87. When Harvey was hired at the Cincinnati VA Medical Hospital, he managed to collect over 30 pounds of cyanide which he had kept in his home. He also kept diaries and detailed notes on each one of his victims, including how he killed them. That gives me just that's intense William Afton vibes. Like, not for some certain reasons, but the delusion of him thinking that he was doing it for the benefit of the victims or just for any benefit it's horrifying, okay? It's the exact same kind of delusion that I could see William having. and a similar delusion to what he seems to have in the games. In the books, he's not exactly like this from my memory, but the game version certainly seems to be the type, okay? Especially given his appearance in the Foxy Go 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 minigame where he's smiling. Getting close to the end in number 3, Thomas Lee Dillon. Thomas Lee Dillon was a serial sniper found guilty of killing 5 men, again with the 5. Directed by voices in his head, Dillon killed people randomly. According to attending psychiatrists, Dillon's delusions of grandeur spilled over into the reality of his life and the lives of his victims. His victims were killed by a high-powered rifle while they participated in outdoor activities, sometimes hundreds of miles from Dillon's home. Authorities did not link the killings to Dillon until he actually sent a letter to a local paper. After the FBI put together a criminal profile of the killer, a friend of Dillon's actually brought it to the attention of the authorities, which in my mind is very close to the story of William Afton. The amount of victims, the authorities only investigating those murders after they got tipped off by a friend of the killer, in Afton's case that being Henry, the delusions or the voices in his head could be him being possessed. But honestly, a whole load of these people are just so much like William, it's terrifying. And ultimately in at number 2, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, as I'm sure you know, was an American serial killer who killed 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospitals and charitable events as Pogo or Patches the Clown, personas that he had devised. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his public services as a clown prior to the discovery of these crimes, but jeez. Gacy committed all of the crimes inside of his ranch house, which is a horrible idea, just like William killing inside of his own pizzeria. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home and then dupe them into donning handcuffs on the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick. And while this is absolutely disgusting and really makes me sick to my stomach, there are still a few similarities to Afton. Okay, killing in a place related to you. For Gacy, it was his ranch house, and for Afton, it's his business. The target demographic is also the same with young people, although Afton also killed girls, which I don't even want. Ugh. And while you may think that this is a stretch, even FNAF itself made the connection with FNAF AR through the clown Springtrap skin. Intentional or not, come on, that's a connection. And finally, in at number 1, Robert Berdella. Robert Berdella is, to me, the seemingly perfect inspiration for William Afton. Not only did this man own his own business called Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, where he reportedly sold human skulls, but he also seemingly started his killing spree in 1984. The MO is certainly not the same. Berdella would drug and kidnap men that he met in bars and on the streets, but the same idea of killing people you meet in a restaurant scene is carried over to William. There is no confirmed inspiration for William, hence this list, but there are certainly a decent amount of similarities between these two. In fact, if you combine like all the serial killers we talked about on this list, especially these last 4, you'll basically get a real William Afton, and I don't like that, okay? That's horrifying. But again, that was the point of this list, so it was a way for me to talk about FNAF without having to talk about FNAF, okay? I didn't go into too much detail with these because, well, I'm sure you can guess why, but yeah. Either way, I think that this is a pretty... The similarities are scary. Getting close to the end in number 3, Joey Drew Studios. Joey Drew Studios, from the Bendy and the Ink Machine series, also known as The Workshop and The Old Workshop, is an American corporation and animation studio established in 1929. This is where he and his friend Henry Stein, along with all the other workers, collaborated for 30 years before the studio's downfall, producing a series of Bendy cartoons. In 1946, Joey Drew Studios was under investigation after reports of hazardous work environments, missing employees, harassment, and excessive back pay, as well as the company's danger of being bankrupt. All of which are the result of Joey's mismanagement of the studio. Anonymous employees threatened to make labor unions over the poor conditions, which included unpermitted buildings, hazardous electrical wiring, and a plumbing system prone to bursting, which sounds exactly like the working conditions that would be in some form of Fazbear establishment. Plus, there's a machine that takes human souls and turns them into ink monsters, like how the animatronics get infused with the souls of the missing children. I feel like that connection was kind of expected on the list. But ultimately, in at number 2, Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is a fictional character created by novelist Thomas Harris. Lecter is a serial killer who eats his victims. Before his capture, he was actually a respected forensic psychiatrist, and after his incarceration he is consulted by FBI agents Will Graham and Clarice Starling to help them find other serial killers. His most iconic appearance being in Silence of the Lambs and the often misquoted line of "Hello Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?" And while you may not be able to find any similarities between Afton and Lecter, this one is actually confirmed as inspiration, at least for his voice. According to his voice actor PJ Haywood, in Sister Location, Afton's voice is inspired by Hannibal Lecter, in a way that he's unnervingly calm even when he's about to kill someone, which is supported by some of his novel counterparts' quotes. So yes, while it's not directly inspiring Afton, it inspired his voice. And finally, in at number 1, Robert Berdella. Robert Berdella is to me the seemingly perfect inspiration for William Afton. Not only did this man own a business called Bob's Bizarre Bazaar, where he reportedly sold human skulls, he also seemingly started killing in 1984. The MO is certainly not the exact same. Berdella would drug and kidnap men that he met at bars or on the streets, but the same idea of killing people you meet in a restaurant is carried over to William Afton. There is no confirmed inspiration for William, but there are certainly a decent amount of similarities between these two. In fact, if you combine the 4 real serial killers I put on this list, Harvey, Dillon, Gacy, and Berdella, you would end up getting basically a real William Afton. I didn't go into much detail with these because, well, YouTube might get mad at that, especially when I'm comparing them to a fictional serial killer from a video game series, but who knows? Either way, I think it's a pretty solid combo of 4 killers, and that's kinda freaky.